All right, first and foremost, happy St. Patrick's Day to all of our friends out there wearing green today, especially those in Dublin. We're assuming you're off for the day, so we will be sure to send this recording out afterwards. My name is Christy Jobman. I'm a marketing manager from Sojourn. I'm coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. Really looking forward to hosting everybody over the next hour. So, shifting gears to put on my Sojourn orange hat, we're going to talk about something today that we've been getting loads of questions about from our advertisers and partners. And that's essentially, what will the new travel advertising landscape look like post third-party cookie? So with that, welcome to Sojourn's first webinar of a 5-part webinar series on the cookieless world. Takeaways that we hope you have at the end of this series is a really deep understanding of what the transition from third-party cookies means for advertising campaigns, solutions to help you with that really smooth transition, opportunities that this actually presents to connect with customers in a more meaningful way, and then specific actions that you can take now to prepare. So we know this subject has a ton of depth to it, so we intend to do this in a very simplified way for you. Most importantly, we want you to walk away feeling super educated and prepared for this next phase of digital advertising when it comes to fruition in 2022. So today we will lay the groundwork in our first webinar, The Future of Travel Advertising Without Third-Party Cookies. Our intention today is really to focus on basics and education for those who are really looking for some extra knowledge into the digital space as it exists today to better understand some of those changes that are going to happen. And over the next month and a half, we'll build on the topics you see in this webinar, really deep diving into the solutions that we touch on so that you can build them into your strategies going forward. Packed agenda today, so we are going to talk about the digital advertising revolution that's on the horizon by first providing a really good overview of the digital marketing landscape, as I mentioned, and then we'll talk through what pixels and cookies are, what's changing about them to form that new third-party cookieless landscape, and how this change can actually improve that customer experience, and of course, what it means for you as a travel advertiser in the future. Finally, rounding it out with a Q&A with our fantastic experts. But before I pass the mic over to them, I wanted to give a quick introduction in case you're new here into what Sojourn does. So we are a global data travel company. We specialize in highly targeted online advertising campaigns for hotels, attractions, destinations, and other tourism industries. We've got thousands of global data partners that give us access to real-time travel data that allows us to find new guests heading to your market, introduce them to your brand, and drive them to learn more about your business with the hope that they will book with you or come and see you via multi-channel ad campaigns. Now, as you can imagine, because digital advertising is at the heart of everything that Sojourn does, finding solutions that help our advertisers to bridge this gap as things shift is incredibly important to us. So with that, we are really excited to have these gentlemen with us today. They are part of an internal task force team that's dedicated to navigating these cookieless changes and then getting the word out to our partners to make that transition smoother for them. I could introduce them myself, but I think they'll do a much better job. So I'm going to kick it over to Vijay and Mitchell to let us know a little bit of their background. And in the spirit of talking about all things cookies, major bonus points if you could tell us what your favorite cookie is.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Christy. Yes, so I'm Vijay. I joined Sojourn just over 4 years ago to look after the audience side of the business, more commonly known as data partners or data partnerships. My role includes looking after data partnerships within the EMEA region and the APAC region. Now, before joining Sojourn, I've got a very long career within the travel industry, predominantly within the aviation industry. So I've spent about 17 years working for Air France, KLM, and Qatar Airways, multiple roles, but also looking after digital marketing and revenue management. I've then had a very short stint, just over 3.5 years, working in the hospitality industry for an online hotel company, an OTA, called Octopus Travel, for those of you who know that brand, although it's been sunset now. And I was looking after their affiliate program and direct partnerships. So needless to say, if you can look at my career, I love everything about travel. It just gives me the buzz. So thank you for joining today. In terms of cookies and my favorite cookie, well, look, I've got a sweet tooth. I've got everything to do with chocolates is my favorite, especially if it's dark chocolate. For today and for Christy's sake, I'll go for chocolate chip cookies. So that's for me. Mitch, over to you.
All right, thanks, VJ. I'm Mitchell Sanford. I've been with Sojourn for just over 7 years now, and I also work with the data partnerships, and I manage our relationships on the Americas side. I actually started from the commercial side, actually managing and executing digital advertising campaigns before transitioning over to managing the data partnerships just over or close to about 2 years ago. And my favorite cookie is oatmeal raisin.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Actually just found out that Oreos are still in the running for a best cookie of all time, apparently. So, all right. As BJ mentioned, a lot of experience here in travel. So that is why we're excited to have them here today and learn about their expertise. Quick reminder, please submit all of your questions on that control panel that you'll see on the right side there throughout the presentation. Again, we'll be sure to share this link out afterwards. You'll be able to find it on our website tomorrow. But with that, we will kick it over to Mitchell for his presentation.
All right. Thank you, Chrissy. Appreciate it. So the reason why we're all here today is to talk about this upcoming change. And that change is the sunset of third-party cookies come 2022. Now, this is going to be a big change to digital advertising and one that will definitely change the way we identify and target travelers, as well as measure the impact of our campaigns. I'm sure we're all, we know change is hard. We know uncertainty is definitely scary, but it's not unfamiliar. Change is always a constant, to be a little bit cliche, but this is especially true when it comes to travel advertising and the digital advertising ecosystem. So really what we want to do to start is set the stage and really talk through where travel advertising has come from to where it's evolved today, because that will certainly play a part as it goes into the future. So starting first with the history, I'll say back in time, but not too far distant past, when a majority of the travel advertising was in print media and also direct buys with individual websites. Of course, the same intention was to get in front of your target audience and where they are, and that interaction was typically in support of content and what they're engaging with. But the really tough part with this is it was fragmented, going to these individual sources, negotiating these different buys, and then also it was very hard to measure the impact after the traveler's seen your ads. And that's really where the digital evolution has really helped propel travel advertising to where it is today. And that also comes into play with programmatic advertising. Now, the intention is still the same, with travel advertising still supporting the content, but really what you're able to do now is really focus on that traveler themselves, but also get in front of them when relevant and at the most opportune time, really regardless of where they are, regardless of the content that they are interacting with or their device. And this can really make it personal, but also measurable in various different ways beyond their engagement. So it will also help kind of to frame this up with talking about how programmatic advertising works. And we can break this down into really 3 different steps. And the first one being identifying your audience. You have to know who that target audience is, but also identify them when they're engaging or visiting, certain websites. So first, when you identify the audience and then they go elsewhere, there's typically going to be an ad space available. And in order to serve an ad ultimately in that ad space, there's an auction that takes place within milliseconds in between multiple different parties at once. Now, we are going to try and get in front of this traveler because of the travel intent that they have shown, but there might be somebody else who's trying to get in front of them with their ad because they maybe had shown intent to purchase their shoes. Now, again, that bidding all takes place in real time within milliseconds, but let's say we won that auction, our ad is then served to that traveler, and we hope that they engage and interact with it and ultimately drive a conversion or the goal of the campaign. Now, throughout each of these steps in programmatic advertising, it is made possible by cookies and mobile IDs, from identifying to seeing that user elsewhere and bidding on them to the measurement after the fact. Now, going back to today's, really the focus of today's conversation, and that's the cookies themselves. So let's go back and really kind of double click into what they are. And if we're going to go into what cookies are, we have to also talk about what pixels are. Now, they're both changing and not changing at the same time. And so this may get a little bit technical and may seem like a lot, but really we want to break it down in between these technologies because it's going to be key going forward in the future. So starting first with what are pixels? Pixels are just a block of code, but you can think of them as like a vehicle for data communication. In this case, the data communication is between the user's interaction on a website and the Sojourn server. When a page loads, the pixel loads. Again, that is just a block of code that loads and the data passback is done. Now, as we talk about the cookieless future, we want to be really clear that the pixels and the data communication functionality is not going anywhere. It will still be made possible. The pixel will still be able to load and the data communication will still happen. So where do cookies come into play? Well, you can think of cookies like a folder that stores the information in the user's browser. Now that information can include details of a user's action on the website itself, which is really why up to this point, cookies have defined our web identity without retaining any personal information, but also the reason why advertisers have heavily relied on them to access that browsing behavior across the different websites in order to deliver the hyper-targeted and relevant ads. So as a quick refresher, pixels is the data communication and cookies is the data storage. So how do these two technologies work together? Well, we figured it'd probably be best to walk through an example of a traveler's path to purchase and where these two technologies come into play. So in this example, a traveler searches on a website for a flight, showing that they are in market for travel. On that website, a pixel loads. The cookie enables data storage in their browser, and that data is then aggregated and anonymized into their Sojourn traveler profile. And then say, Sojourn is managing a campaign on behalf of an advertiser whose goal is to drive travelers to book with them directly. We'll target an audience who are made up of travelers in market. Again, this is based on their previous interactions and bucketing into those aggregated and anonymized audiences, the Sojourn traveler profiles. And we see those users engaging with content and ad spaces available. And then we want to bid on them and hopefully get our ad in front of them to influence them to visit the advertiser's website and complete their booking. So now that we know what pixels and cookies are and how they function together, let's quickly break down the types of cookies themselves. I have to apologize and sorry to disappoint if people thought this would be a slide full of different types of cookies, chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, Oreos, but it's not. We're focusing on the two different cookies here, first and third party. And we want to be explicitly clear that only the latter, the third party cookies, are the ones that are going away in the future. So what's the difference between the two? Well, let's start with what's remaining, and that's the first party cookies. These ones are not going away. These are the cookies that are dropped by the website owners themselves. And they have many uses, including site personalization, for example, remembering your language preferences, or maybe the destination that you had searched last, or check and check out dates when you last visited, or even what was left in your traveler shopping cart. On the other side, third-party cookies, these are the ones that we have been discussing up to this point as the ones that are placed on the user's browser for advertising purposes on behalf of the owner's website. So for example, say Hotel California hires Sojourn to run their digital advertising campaigns. This currently requires the use of third-party cookies for identification, targeting, and measurement, as we have discussed so far. All right, now that we've talked about how pixels and cookies operate in today's world, the difference between first and third-party cookies, VJ is now going to take us through what the future of advertising and these technologies will look like.
Great. Thank you, Mitchell, for that. That was a wonderful synopsis of what the ecosystem looks like today. You know, just to kind of summarize that again. We talked a little bit about the history of advertising, and we talked about the evolution of advertising. We then touched on pixels, cookies, and how they work today. And we will continue working with today's norm, because until such time when third-party cookies go away, so kind of please bear that in mind. We then talked about differences between first-party cookies and third-party cookies. And to summarize everything that kind of Mitchell kind of reinforced in all these slides is that, pixels are here to stay. So kind of keep that in your mind, that pixels are going nowhere. First-party cookies are also here to stay as well. What we are going to be talking about is the future of advertising at the time when third-party cookies go away. When third-party cookies are sunset, what does that ecosystem look like, right? That is the section that I'm going to cover now. So I'd like to start by actually talking about some of the challenges we have with third-party cookies. Now, please do not get me wrong. I'm just going to caveat this, that today we are using third-party cookies for targeting consumers, right? Which is really the industry norm. And it works, and it's thriving, right? And we will continue being in this space, which uses third-party cookies, and supporting our advertisers with our solutions that use third-party cookies until such time when they are completely sunset. But nevertheless, they do have a few challenges that kind of sit around it, and I'd like to address them now. The first and foremost, without a doubt and without any surprise, is privacy, right? Now, despite regulations like GDPR in Europe, or PDPA in Singapore, or CCPA in the state of California, USA, to give you a few examples, users have continued to voice their concerns and frustration over privacy, right? Privacy, as well as lack of control and choice that they have with third-party cookies. So Google, with others in this space, the browsers, others in this space, want to go further and make the web more private and secure, right? So this is really a fundamental piece to keep in mind. It is going to be the thread continuing into the presentation. So this is really one to kind of hone into, right? Privacy is a big thing, right? Second challenge that I'd like to kind of discuss a little bit is around cross-device targeting. Now, third-party cookies don't work across multiple devices, right? Cookies are device-based, so they cannot help us to know when someone switches between devices, between browsers, right? What it really does is actually fractures the customer's journey, because you can't really know what one is doing between one device and the other device. Now, again, I'll caveat that there are certain probabilistic ways. There are companies out there who do some kind of key matching and do allow a level of cross-device targeting, but that is based on probabilistic, right? A probabilistic approach. What we're talking about here is a deterministic approach, which is not possible with third-party cookies. That means, right, that deterministically, right, we cannot target across multiple devices, right? That's a fact, right? So even taking that a little bit further, what it also means is that we actually cannot do what we call people-based targeting. And what is people-based targeting? It's targeting those people or those users in all of the places, in all of the devices that they are using, logged into, right? We can't do that today. We can do a shallow version probabilistically, but not a robust version deterministically, right? And the third and most obvious one is that really cookies can be blocked, cookies can be deleted, right? So there are some challenges that sit around third-party cookies, as addressed. But then the next question comes into my mind is that why are they going away, right? Why are third-party cookies going away? Again, I'm going to go back to the first point, right? The fundamental reason is around consumer privacy, right? It is really due to the privacy requests, control, and choice consumers have long demanded, right? That players like Google have made a decision to have a cookieless world, right? Again, just to reinforce myself, we are talking about third-party cookies here, right? So players like Google have made a decision to have a cookieless internet. Okay, that's Google, but also just to note here that the Apple browser, Safari, and the Mozilla browser, Firefox, have already taken this decision. They took this decision a couple of years back, some time back, right? So they already don't allow advertising using third-party cookies as identifiers. They don't allow that today, right, by default, okay? Google is joining them with their browser, Chrome, in 2022, right? Again, with the objective of making this a cookieless web, right? So challenges, why are they going away? Then the next question is quite obvious, is why does this matter to me? Why does this matter to you? Why does this matter to me? Why does this matter at all to anyone within the digital ecosystem? And the best way or a good way to look at this is really, let's look at the internet population, right? And look at the browser usage within this internet population, right? Now, we all know Chrome is the most popular browser based on usage. 66% of global web users are using the Chrome browser. That's already 2/3, right? And with Google stopping the use or sunsetting the use of third-party cookies as identifiers, you're already not going to be able to target users using third-party cookies in that environment of, let me rephrase that, 66% of the people will not be able to see an ad using third-party cookies, okay? Now, if you then add Safari, you then add Firefox, that figure goes up 87%. 87%, right? Which means that 87% of the internet population cannot be targeted using third-party cookies. Now, remember, we're talking about the near future because Google's action is going to happen in 2022, but that's not far away, right? 87% of the people of the internet population, you will not be able to target them using third-party cookies. It will impact the entire digital ecosystem where third-party cookies are currently being used to identify and target users. This is why we need to start now, right? This is why we need to work together to keep continuity in running your advertising campaigns, delivering performance, and booking revenues or delivering revenues for you, keeping that continuity in delivering those revenues, which is why we're launching this webinar series, because at the end of the webinar series, you will be equipped with all the relevant information that you need to transition, into this cookieless world, and we will be here to support you. So we will be here to support you all the way. So now, having talked about challenges, why they're going away, why does it matter? Let's try and look at an example to put this into perspective. So I'd like you to kind of just think about when you have done some browsing, right? We all know that today when somebody wants to search for a holiday or a hotel or a flight, it's not you search on one device at one point in time and you book straight away. The majority of the time, the whole kind of dream phase is over multiple devices over a period of time, right? So you would look at multiple devices, spend different times, morning, evening, different days, just trying to build your vacation, right? Now, in this example, imagine that you're sitting today on your laptop and you are going to be booking a hotel in Dallas. Okay, so let's start with that. So you're searching for a hotel in Dallas. Okay, now maybe a few hours later you might finish your searches, not book. You might go out for a walk, or you might use another device and start, texting your friends or whatever. And then a few hours later, you'll sit with your mobile and you'll continue your searches. And this goes on, right? This goes on over a duration of a few days or maybe even a month, right? Over multiple devices, right? All this activity that's happening, all this browsing behavior that's happening, it is not connected because, as we mentioned, going back to our challenges, right, where third-party cookies are device-based, they're not synced in a deterministic way. That one device activity is not synced with another device activity, right? So there is no communication there, okay? And it will not know what activity you've done between the devices. So in your example, what will happen is that after a certain period of time, when you're actually definite that you want to book the Omni Hotel in Dallas, you'll go on your laptop and you'll make the booking, right? And then you'll stop your searching on that hotel. Now, what could happen, right, with a retargeting partner, because the sync is not there in a deterministic way, that your mobile activity is showing that you've done searches, but you've not done the booking on the mobile, right? You've done it actually on your laptop, right? So you could be in a position where you are targeted to book the omni-channel hotel on your mobile. Now, just sit with that and think about the disjointed experience that the user will have when these devices are not connected. How many times have you been retargeted with an ad for a product which you've actually already booked, right? So you can see why this is happening. It's really not a great user experience. But again, to caveat myself, this is what we have today, and we do our best. We use probabilistic approaches to ensure we minimize that, right? But it's not a robust process. Okay, it is what we will continue working with, but the future, in my opinion, is very bright. So now let's look at the same example and the traveler's experience, or your experience, when third-party cookies have been sunset, right? In the future, all your browsing and booking histories and activities will be synced, irrespective of over what duration period, irrespective of the number of devices that you've switched between in that period. It will all be synced together when third-party cookies go away, right? And this will be made possible by more persistent identifiers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in future slides, but it will be made possible with more persistent identifiers that will track across all the devices and browsers, and it will communicate all the activity between devices and browsers, right? So we will know what activity is happening in each of the devices and in each of the browsers. So to go back into the example, you can imagine with all that activity that you've done, and I won't repeat that, but over a period of time between multiple devices, and you've finally made your booking to the Omni Dallas Hotel on your laptop, right? Now the marketing company will have all that data and will know that you've actually made that booking. So when they do have another advertiser who wants to promote activities, for example, it would be a perfect match for you to be retargeted with activities in Dallas, as opposed to having been retargeted with make a booking for a hotel in Dallas, the Omni Hotel. How about being retargeted with doing some activities in Dallas? You're going to Dallas. Well, the obvious thing is that you might be interested in activities, right? Now think of that user experience. How positive will that be? How profound will that be? And it will be like a dream come true for everybody in that whole journey. The advertiser, the consumer, everybody will benefit. Budgets will be used more optimally, right? And this is the exciting part that we're moving into the future. So, do not be scared that third-party cookies are going away. No, they will work now, and in the future, we will have other solutions that we are going to talk to you about shortly. So, going back to the diagram that Mitchell presented to you around programmatic advertising and how it works today. This whole ecosystem between identifying audiences, bidding on the ad space, and serving ads, this will still remain, right? The ecosystem's not going anywhere. This will still remain. The only difference will be that instead of using cookies or third-party cookies as the persistent or the identifier to identify consumers, we will introduce persistent identifiers, right? And at this point, I'd like to introduce you to one such persistent identifier called hashed emails, right? This is the identifier that Sojourn is going to adopt as its foundational identifier to identify consumers in the future when third-party cookies are sunset. Because we believe that a deterministic way, a deterministic, targeted, programmatic advertising will be made possible, and it will be made possible with hashed emails. right? Now, at this juncture, I know many people might be thinking, so, Google's made this recent announcement. Yes, they made an announcement about 2-3 weeks ago, right? Even with that announcement that Google made, right, around how they're going to operate, this usage of hashed emails as a persistent identifier will still be the case, right? Many leading demand-side platforms, or more commonly known as DSPs, will support hashed emails as identifiers through initiatives like the Universal ID 2.0. Now, we won't go into the Universal ID 2.0 because of time and because we want to get into a Q&A session. But for those who are interested in understanding of what this Universal ID 2.0 is, I highly recommend that you Google it because there's a lot of information out there. But needless to say that all of these DSPs will be supporting hashed emails, right, as identifiers. And Sojourn, right, works with many of these DSPs, like Xandr, like Trade Desk. We have a multi-DSP strategy. That is our strategy. So we already work with Xandr and Trade Desk, okay? This will allow us to continue providing advertising solutions using hashed emails as consumer identifiers. Now, with that said, Sojourn is also supportive of additional model approaches that Google and others may be testing. And once that testing is done and those approaches are validated, we will also embrace those models and layer them in to our solutions. Our foundation still being hashed emails, but if there are other solutions that are being tested, modeled, and tested, we will layer them into our solution. So in summary, really, hashed emails will play a very key role as a user-level identification because of its advantages around privacy and control, right? Privacy and control for consumers, okay? But it also allows for people-based marketing. We talked about Crossdevice quite a bit. It allows for people-based marketing, which is a more robust way of marketing, a deterministic way of marketing. And, despite Google's announcement, a few weeks back, they will continue to support hashed emails within their own owned properties like search and YouTube. So you can see, in this whole synopsis that hashed emails is going to play a very key role for the digital ecosystem when the third-party cookies are sunset. And this leads me nicely into giving you a sneak peek of what Sojourn's solution is going to be. Now, I say a sneak peek because this is really the second webinar, right? This is a sneak peek to the second webinar session that will be held on 31st of March, 2021, where we will further deep dive into each of these pillars. That webinar will be hosted by our Vice President of Product, Dave Golden, who's really been the part and parcel of this strategy in building this strategy. So as the saying goes, you will actually hear from the horse's mouth, right? I will touch on these pillars a little bit, but please make sure that you register for that webinar because it will be very, very insightful for you and beneficial for you as well. Now, before I actually explain each of these pillars, I do want to say something which is quite important, that our strategy is not really built for a certain size of business out there, right? Our strategy is built to support all business sizes, right? You may start worrying, some of the smaller businesses might start worrying about the bigger boys, right? They have more money, more manpower, they will kind of trample over us. No, Sojourn's position is that we will be building solutions which will help all business sizes, right? Whether they are large enterprise businesses or whether they are small and medium-sized businesses who may have limitations in resources and budgets. We are there to support all of you. So let's move a little bit into the strategy. Our strategy is built on 3 pillars. Our foundational identity or identifier for a consumer is going to be hashed emails, and I've kind of shared all the reasons with you why that is absolutely important, right? This will be the persistent identifier or what you call the digital passport, and we will use this to identify consumers and target them, right? Now, hashed emails work very much in tandem with first-party cookie IDs. This is the first time I'm bringing out this point around first-party cookie IDs, but it will be further deep dived into in the next webinar session, right? But I'll give you a little bit about how that works together with HashTML. So HashTMLs and first-party cookie IDs work in tandem, right? And basically, first-party cookie IDs are unique IDs that you share with us. So these are really the IDs that you give your consumers. It's not an ID we provide. It's whatever ID you give your consumers. And we will use this this ID, which will actually tell us the activity of your user on your website, you know, the browsing activity, all of this, the confirmation, everything, all the activity that they do on your website. All these first-party cookies will come to us to give us that picture of all the activity that your user is doing on the website. We will then attach it to the HashTML. So we'll have a persistent identifier, which is the HashTML. All this activity will build that profile, and it will help us to enhance your campaign performance. Now, the third and final pillar in this whole strategy is around historical booking data, or more commonly known as offline data. Now, if I can explain what that with an example, if you're an airline, for example, you will have a ticket desk at some of the airports, right? Now, all the activity that's happening at the ticket desk, all the transactions, the bookings that are happening at the ticket desk, this is data that's sitting offline, right? And we're able to ingest that data into our data pool. You could also have online data that is sitting offline, and we'll be able to ingest that into our data pool. The whole objective of our strategy really is to adapt, right? Is to adapt this change that is coming, but still deliver, right? Deliver your campaigns for you, deliver performance, deliver revenue, and this strategy is built for that. By collecting emails, by collecting first-party cookie IDs, and if there is historical booking data, we're going to collect all the information that we will need to make sure that we are running your campaigns as optimally as possible. Now, I'm going to leave it there because, as I said, the whole second webinar is really going into this, and I'm going to end with a summary of today's webinar takeaways, and then I will hand over to our lovely Christy, who is going to run the Q&A for us. So, looking at today's webinar takeaways, we started by talking about the history. We talked about pixels and cookies and the differences between first-party and third-party cookies. I hope that's clear for you now. Again, advertising today uses third-party cookies, and we've established that, and it will continue using third-party cookies until such time when Google flicks the switch, and then you know you have 87% of the population that you can't target, right? So it will be used until that point in time. But third-party cookies are going away. And if Google is going to maintain their timing, we're looking at 2022, right? Again, to reinforce, pixels are staying, first-party cookies are staying, third-party cookies are going away, which will change the advertising ecosystem. And this is where we've then introduced you to our three-pillar solution to replace that third-party cookie being sunset and to still continue working with you. So I hope you've had enough information there to set the foundation for the other webinars. Again, I know I've repeated myself a few times, but really, guys, it's absolutely crucial that you attend the subsequent webinar series. The whole series is being built to build on this information that we want to give you around this whole change that's coming. The next webinar will be on 31st of March, where we will be further deep diving into our three-pillar strategy. And with that, I thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it over to Christy for the Q&A session. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We have a ton to unpack here, and we absolutely have the questions to prove it. Highly engaged audience today, so we appreciate that. I myself have been researching this transition for months, and every time I hear another one of these discussions, I learn a lot. So I hope that our listeners did too. That said, please keep those questions coming in the control panel, and if we miss anything today, we'll be sure to reach out to you directly afterwards. So let's dive into what we have so far. I think this first question is a really good one and something that a lot of our advertisers are asking. This change can seem pretty daunting. So are there any positives that will come out of this change for advertisers to look forward to in the future?
That's a good question. I'll start. I'll give Vijay a little bit of break. I know he's been talking for a while, so I'll start.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think the whole thing is a positive change for the whole ecosystem, really one that's evolving to protect consumer privacy, give them more control over their data. Of course, there are those control mechanisms in place now for the consumers to manage opt-outs, have transparency into their digital footprint, but those tools will only become stronger with the growth of those more persistent identifiers that BJ was talking about, as opposed to currently, managing opt-outs, managing or looking into your data footprint across your different devices, because each of those have different IDs associated to them. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a positive change in consumer forward in privacy and control.
Yeah, and if I can jump in there, yeah, you're right, Mitchell. I mean, we've talked about privacy as super fundamental, which is why really this change is coming. But there are other benefits that it brings with it, right? So we've talked a lot about cross-device marketing, and it's become my mantra now. Cross-device marketing, people-based marketing, they're buzzing in my mind. But it is a benefit, because you can imagine that user experience that we went through, right? When you have an experience like that, it is a lot of positivity for your brand there. There's a lot of profoundness in that experience, right? So that will be made possible in a deterministic way. But also, I wanted to share with you an important statistics here, that a lot of these consumers today are spending a lot of their time on authenticated environments. One study showed that 85% of the people are spending their time on authenticated environments, like apps, communication apps, CTV, etc. Right? So we want to make sure that we are able to leverage on those environments and are able to kind of target those consumers. So there's going to be advanced marketing opportunities, right? A lot of the media is being looked at, and is being looked at being spent on those environments where they can find those consumers, right? So marketeers want to spend the money on those environments. Consumers are spending their time on those environments. So we want to make sure, and these are authenticated environments, right? People are logging in with their emails. And so we want to make sure that we can capture those opportunities in those environments and target those consumers, right? So absolutely, collectively, very, very positive. That's my opinion as well.
Great, you make that sound actually pretty exciting.
It is.
So we've touched on this quite a bit, but we continue to see this question come up, and I think it's a big piece of this. So how will this affect cross-device tracking?
Sure, I'll take that, since I said it's my mantra, Mitchell. I'll go with that, and then you can jump in at the end. So yeah, really, we've talked about cross-device marketing, and let me just explain that again. That today, this cookies are device-based. Okay, so cross-device, really, again, we talk about deterministic way, which is a robust way, is not possible with third-party cookies, purely because they are device-based and cookies don't talk to each other. The cookies are different between devices. Yes, I'm going to put probabilistic way on the side, because really it's a suboptimal way, right? But let's talk about the real way, which is the deterministic way. So, in the future, this is going to be possible because of those persistent identifiers, because of that identifier. Not many people, or you don't usually change your emails, right? Cookies can be deleted, could be blocked. Now, how many times do you change your emails, right? So you're going to use the same email to go into your app. You're going to use the same email to log into another device, another browser. It's pretty much most of the time going to be the same email. That becomes a persistent identifier. That's then going to be the link between those devices, right? And so then the opportunity becomes big, to go back to my words, a robust way, a deterministic way. So absolutely, this will affect cross-device marketing, but in a positive way, right? Mitch, do you have anything to add there?
Well, yeah, I guess furthermore, I think the accuracy of cross-device tracking improves. I think of Facebook as an example, who's been doing this for years, obviously knowing, based on various logins on work computer, maybe your phone, your home computer, that sort of thing. Like, it's going back to what you've been talking about, is the people-based marketing, but it enables that opportunity to be certainly more accurate. And yeah,
it's a good word to remember, accuracy. Yeah, it's really really good.
Great, very helpful. So shifting gears into kind of the Sojourn ecosystem. So how can a programmatic advertiser like Sojourn add value to an advertiser's business in the third-party cookieless world?
Well, I think continue doing really what we're doing. We kind of laid the foundation in our conversation today, and as BJ mentioned, there'll certainly be more to it. But we're really approaching this as we've done similar changes in the past. I guess, I don't know if I could say similar, but just another change, and one that we've really focused on. Okay, how can we make sure that we can continue to provide optimal capabilities and performance to campaigns when it comes to targeting the end market travelers programmatically going forward. So really, we've started to prepare now, and even before now, many different projects and work streams around this, but really we want to make sure that, again, I think BJ, you had mentioned it even in your slides, seamless transition, but also we're here to support when the switch is made. So yeah, I think continuing to prepare.
Yeah, and the three pillars will give you an insight into our solution, but also, you know, as we build on into and as you kind of go into the other webinar series, it's going to touch on some very, very interesting topics, which will kind of give you a fuller picture around how, you know, Sojourn will be able to support you. You know, for example, the third webinar session is about retargeting, and you know, a lot of you will be using retargeting as a tactic today because it's one of the best ROI tactics that is out there, right? So that will be impacted, and how will that be impacted? What are some of the takeaways for marketeers? You know, so these webinar series will equip you in giving you information around how Sojourn's overall portfolio of support looks like for you.
Awesome. So I think this next question, I think we have pretty good breadth of small to large advertisers on this call today. So, and you did mention this briefly earlier, BJ, but do you anticipate that the elimination of third-party cookies will create an even larger technological hurdle for those smaller companies to overcome and compete with the big dogs? It seems like larger companies will be able to adapt and spend the money required to take advantage of newer technologies like email hashing, while small companies might be left in the dust. So obviously pretty important for our small to medium-sized businesses. What do we got?
Well, yeah, I totally get that. That's why, you know, let me start by saying, please, to the small and medium-sized, you know, businesses or our audience out there, you know, please do not worry, because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm glad this question has come through, because I like to reinforce that more, that, you know, Sojourn as a company is building solutions for both enterprise clients or the large enterprise clients, but also the small, medium-sized businesses, right? So whatever we do and whatever solutions we build, both of those sizes of businesses are factored into when that the design and the build happens. So for example, our cookieless solution took this into an account to ensure, you know, there is efficient scalability, and that there is, you know, taking into account like the differences in how these various sizes of businesses operate. You know, our solutions, for example, just to give you an example, you know, if you don't have the resources or are unable to encrypt your emails or hash your emails, our solution will have that facility inbuilt, right? Again, we're not going to be charging for it. You know, it's nothing like, don't even have that question, how much extra will that cost? No, it's part of the solution. It's what we are here for, right? And we'll provide that. If you say that, no, we'll hash it ourselves, fine, we'll take that and we'll ingest it in our solution. So we are very fluid and flexible to ensure that we support all of you, right? Please go away thinking that this is not just for the big boys, this is for everybody, right? Mitch, anything to add there, or kind of covers it, right?
No, yeah, you really covered it all.
Cool.
Awesome. I hope that gives our small advertisers a little bit of peace of mind for sure. So next question here, I think we have time for two more. So as a company who partners with third-party data providers, like us, for example, to deliver ads programmatically, how can you continue this model without third-party tracking cookie layers to layer into that targeting and segmentation?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that definitely Vijay had mentioned towards the end there. Ultimately, we'll rely on hashed emails and other identifiers to ensure we're continuing to be able to identify and target travelers and segment them. I know that's pretty brief, but again, we're relying on existing technologies, but enabling other identifiers outside of the third-party cookies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I think we'll probably go over that a little more in depth as we continue on through the series. I think I'm going to wrap up with this question here. What are some proactive things that we can be doing now to get ahead of the sunset of third-party cookies? I think that's what everybody is asking. So,
yeah, I think attending this is a good first step, but really educating yourselves, continuing education, educating consumers. Again, we talked about a positive change for the overall ecosystem, but just really so everyone is aware of, the upcoming change and the impact, but also preparing for it. So education is kind of a theme I'd say I'd go with, and to continue plugging the additional webinar series. This is actually one topic that I know we'll touch on, which is specifically how should travel marketers prepare today for the cookieless future.
Yeah, that's right. That's webinar number 4. So, and if I can add to that, feel free to reach out to your account manager or to reach out to any of us in Sojourn if there are any questions you have. But we will, be launching quite a few materials to help you navigate through this space. You're not alone there. We're there for you.
that's great. Thank you both so much for sharing your expertise with me and our listeners today. As they've mentioned a few times, we do have these coming in a every 2-week cadence to keep everybody up to speed as we learn about changes and to continue educating you. A big thank you to our virtual participants for your time and engagement today. And if you do have specific cookieless world questions, please feel free to tag us on social, send us a direct message, reach out to your reps. We are here, as they have said, anytime you need us. The webinar will be available tomorrow on our webinar page. If you don't receive that link, feel free to share with your friends. And with that, I will leave you with a quote from a fantastic movie, and that's the way the third-party cookie crumbles. We will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.